It was during her administration.
Yeah.
They wanted to put a power plant at the Pownell racetrack. They wanted to put a power plant, I believe, in Rutland, where they had a trash incinerator that was going to be converted to power. And all of those things stopped dead in the tracks. So the natural gas spur came through the Northeast Kingdom and then drops down into upper New Hampshire and eventually fed the seacoast of New Hampshire. We could have been part of that spur. If we had been part of that spur, probably the economics of natural gas and building a gas-fired power plant would have forced Vermont Yankee to close as scheduled by the permit. But when you don't have the replacement, it's not going to happen to
But look at the resistance to that spur idea.
Oh, that spur was fighted with the NIMBY syndrome, which is not in my backyard, as a political hot potato, just like the wind generators are a hot potato. Nobody wants a wind generator on their hill.
Yeah, and no, evidently no source is more opposed than these wind solar generators, because I think they take up so much space. They influence so many people. The footprint has to be huge.
I think that if you look at generation of power, when you compare solar, wind, and nuclear, there's still a footprint that is impacted, whether it's part of the emergency planning zone that is impacted, or whether it's because you hear the noise of the wind turbines that are impacted. You know, if we want the convenience of power, we are going to be impacted.
And I think that's part of the argument that doesn't, or the conversation that doesn't be held, is what choices do we want to make? And when we make this choice, what's it going to look like? And the risk assessment that goes with all those choices. And that's where we have to be adults.
Absolutely. Yep.
And sometimes I think that's a little on the lacking side. So from a businessman point of view, it sounds like this could really tighten the belt and make us suffer competitively.
I believe that, without cost-effective power that our bigger industries can tap into, it will definitely impact us. And that's going to be a trickle-down effect. If a big business leaves, there'll be less jobs. If there's less jobs, it's harder for people to make the mortgage payments, so they move to where there is a job. They, in return, elect to sell their house in a lower rate, so the housing prices spiral. It's a spiral effect. It takes a lot to stop it from going down. It takes a lot to get it to go up. Years ago, somebody said, well, it's like a pendulum. You can push the pendulum one way, and then it'll only go so far, and then it's going to come back hard the other way, and you got to try to always balance that pendulum so you can plan for your future. You'd like to be able to plan for retirement, know that your hospital is going to still be in business and not forced out of business because of power, and know that you can still afford your home because we have businesses here that are paying the taxes, and know that
providing jobs.
And providing jobs. Yeah. So, you want to plan for your own future, and power is really a critical component because it impacts the food that we'll have at the supermarket. If it costs more power to run the compressors for all that nice fresh produce, it's going to cost more to live.
Yeah, and we have people who will say, well, we could just all walk, or we should all just grow, have our own gardens. And that might work for some people, but other people, you just don't have the space to do it, or you're working full time if you have a job. And so it's sort of a little unrealistic thinking that it's all going to shift back to the 1900s.
I think it's very unreasonable to think that way. An example that I would use, as I mentioned earlier, I've been burning wood as my primary fuel source since about 1978. But I was also very fortunate. I had a business partner who happened to also work out of the house, so she could afford the every 2 hours to go down and feed the wood furnace. If she was working off-site, not at home, She couldn't feed a wood furnace, so I'd have to rely on oil. Well, everybody has to have a balance, and not everybody is going to want to raise their own chickens in their backyard. I raised chickens, and 2 days later the fox got it, so I got out of the chicken business. But I did raise pigs, and they were good. But then I lost my source of free food to feed those pigs, so after a while I got out of the pig business too. But it was fun.
Yeah, and to think that we can all go back to the 1990s, which is, some of the suggestions of how we'd have to organize things, it would be. Another pressure we're feeling, I'm sure business is feeling, is this new healthcare law that the House has passed, which they've done what I think the single payer advocates have always wanted. You're in favor of a single payer type
Absolutely.
system. The big problem that I think all of them have never squared the corner on is how's it going to be paid for? And this bill doesn't address that either. But what are your thoughts on some of that?
Well, let me start off by saying I am in favor of a single payer healthcare system. Healthcare is something that everybody should be able to participate in. At what level of healthcare you participate in should also be considered based on your contributions. It can't be just uniformly right across the board that everybody gets the best of everything, because we can't afford that.
Well,
it's not in the mix.
I know, but that's, I think, what the single payer advocates, that's how they see it coming out.
I think the single payer advocates are going to have the realization that we're all in it together, so you have to compromise. And what I mean by that is, I look at single payer healthcare similar to, let's say, Medicare. We know that Medicare doesn't give you everything at the age of 66 or 65. If you want to buy the best possible healthcare, you will buy supplemental insurance or Medigap to help take care of the needs that you feel could come up in your future. So we do have a single payer healthcare system in place. It's known as Medicare.
You're true.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
We do have programs that have been accepted by people to say this is the level of service I get with Medicare. So I think I will put a little money away as I'm growing older to buy a little bit more insurance so that I can have Medicare plus some supplemental stuff to take care of. Okay? So that's taking responsibility for yourself, but it's still a single payer system. And then the last component of it is everybody has to put in a portion. Now what I mean by this is, if you worked your entire 45, 50-year career for cash off the books and the government didn't catch you, you're not going to get Medicare because you don't even have a record. On the same token, if you are not paying anything towards your medical insurance, it's not fair. So you need to have a single payer program that requires both the young, healthy 23-year-old construction worker who doesn't want to participate in catamount, because let's face it, I'm healthy and I'd rather have my money for my car payment.
Yeah.
And you need that young 23-year-old and the moderately middle-aged 40-year-old construction worker who's now starting to think of, gee, I got tennis elbow here or carpal tunnel developing, I better have some health insurance, but I'll get it next year when I'm 50. And then you also have the folks that are now starting to say, boy, I got another ache and pain and I need that insurance. Insurance doesn't cover and pay unless we all participate. So what I look at is I say the following. If you have car insurance, which we're required to have, that covers your liability. If you want collision and comprehensive insurance, you pay extra for that. Well, that's the same thing, the analogy for Medicare and Medigap. At the same time, no one should be allowed to just have it carte blanche free of charge. They should be required, and I know some states actually have a tax that they impose where if you don't have medical insurance, you are, when you have your state income tax return filled out, you're automatically penalized another $900 per individual.
That's Massachusetts, isn't it?
I believe so. I don't want to be quoted on that because I don't like to say something
Yeah.
that I'm not 100% sure of, but I think I'm 99%
They
sure
have
of
a
that.
penalty, I think.
Yeah, they have a penalty, and that's fair.
The problem with this healthcare bill that our state is looking at is there's an equity belief that is a component of this, that everybody should have equal access and equal access to the same thing. Where the system you just described, if you want to pay for, you have a minimum that's allowable, and if you want more, you have to pay for more.
Right.
Which is the way the Medicare system is set up. But that's not the way this healthcare bill will be coming down at this point. And it will be loaded, it's pretty much paid for on the payroll tax. So if you have a person who has a trust fund, or is retired, or maybe doesn't work, like I don't work, I won't pay anything towards it, and yet I'll get healthcare.
I haven't seen
That's it.
the finer points of it,
Mhm.
and I can't really comment on it. I do know that there are people that are devoting a lot of energy and effort towards it, and I just hope that whether you're a pro single payer, carte blanche, give them everything, or you're of the belief that I'm at, where I'm a single payer, and I believe we should have a fair amount of health coverage for everyone. I think that, you know, the people that are working to pull that package together will hopefully take us all into consideration, because we're all in it together.
Yeah, we are, and I think the way the House bill reads right now, I've read it, is it's got several parts that are disturbing. One is that there's going to be a board in charge of deciding what they'll pay for and what's covered. And that board also will decide if they have to raise our income taxes, they will. If they have to raise the assessment fees on the hospitals, the equipment we use, they will. And so the legislature has given those responsibilities that we elected them to do to a board. And so I think that's a little problematic. I mean, we're going to see some interesting results come out of that process.
I think you're going to see a lot of interesting results. You have to keep in mind that your hospital care is also ruled by, I believe, a board, so that BMH just can't charge what they want. They have to prove to it. When you look at a board saying how much they want to reimburse a doctor for services, I think there are a lot of doctors and medical facilities that would prefer to practice medicine than to try to practice the business of a roulette wheel. And that's about what it is when you try to figure out what you're going to be reimbursed with.
On that note, I want to thank you, Art, for talking with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation, and we thank you for watching. You've been watching Neighbor to Neighbor. My name is Lynn Corum. I've been here with Art Greenbaum, and we hope to see you on our next show.